Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy.
Good morning. I'm Kim.
And we thought today for one thing more,
Mm-hmm.
one thing more, that we would kind of talk about what Pastor Dave was talking about in his sermon about self-deception, but in a way that we can speak with parents and kids. We thought that we could, just help parents today find the words to help the kids refer to themselves with, and how they can maybe get out of that. We all do self-deception, right? But help them so they're not doing it as much. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I would probably call it like positive reframe. Like if your kiddo
Right.
Says something that's negative about themselves, like think about that and how could you say that differently?
Yeah, there was an example I saw in an article about, sometimes our kids say things like, I'm stupid. And a kid tripped over a rug and said, I'm stupid. And the parent went back and said, wait, come here for a moment. Let's talk about this. You're not stupid, actually. I think when you tripped over the rug that you were in a hurry. So let's rephrase that. How could you have said that differently? Because we know you're not stupid. And she had her child go back and say, well, I wasn't paying attention and I tripped over the rug. And the parent goes, yeah, you just weren't paying attention. I agree. And then you've taken that negativity out of what happened.
Yes.
Right.
And I think a really simple thing to say is what else could be true? Like if your child says that negative thing about themselves, just ask them a question. Be curious about, well, what else could be true besides that thing you just said?
Yes, exactly. And it's how they talk about themselves, I think, making sure our kids refer to themselves in a way that is loving for themselves.
Yeah, when we were kind of chatting before we started actually recording, you were saying that words are so important, and the words we say, like, they stick to us, they stick to our children. We recall them as adults. I bet every parent who's listening to us right now can remember something that a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a teacher, a coach said to them that was like, we remember those things.
We sure do. And we also start believing those things too. So if we're remembering them, we're believing in them in some way. And so we want to help our kids speak truth to themselves. Because often they don't. Just like that example of tripping over the rug and calling themselves stupid. That's not truth.
No. And it's a good opportunity to remind them that they are created in God's image. And certainly God doesn't create, bad things for people.
Yeah, it's I think the growth mindset that we want for our kids, that we're going to make mistakes. God knows we're going to make mistakes, right? And he loves us anyway. He loves us just as we are. And that doesn't mean that we stay where we are. That means that he loves us so much that he wants to help us grow also, right? And so that growth mindset of make mistakes, try again, like things that we can tell ourselves and our kids so they are not having that negative talk about themselves and speaking untruths to themselves.
Yeah. And I think some of the best lessons I've learned have been because I made a mistake or did the thing incorrectly the first time. There's some mistakes that you make and you're like, oh, I'll never do that again. Like I just this weekend, I played golf and my husband said that he had left the trunk open, not this weekend, but that once he had gone to play golf and came out of his rounds and the trunk was still open. I was like, oh, that could have been an epic fail. But you'll never leave your trunk open again, probably, if you do something like that.
Right. Yeah. You learn from that. It's old school language would be like a self-consequence.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what happens when, yeah. And what I liked what Pastor Dave was saying in his sermon was he was talking about how what we tell ourselves and how it distorts sometimes what we're really seeing. Does
Yeah,
that
it's
make
easy to justify our own. Like I think when we're in the box, like the authors are talking about, it's easy to um, justify our actions. I love the example of the guy pretending to be asleep when the baby's crying because he did the last time, and it's his wife's turn to get up with the baby, and he's going through all these mental gymnastics while pretending to be asleep. He's justifying why he's pretending. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm tired. I just need a few more winks. And the wife's like, really? Like, no,
Right.
right? Like those things that, and I think there was another example in the book about like a baby learning to crawl, but they could only crawl backwards, and they crawled under something and they couldn't get out because there was no way out. Like, and then they got upset. And they got upset. It looked like they were upset with the parents, like, and they put themselves in that situation. They just needed to ask, like, it's a baby, of course, so they're not going to ask for it. But they got so angry and upset about it. Like, and you're like, okay, let me help you. And then, of course, they went right back in and backed up back in. Like, it's just funny how that happens.
Yeah, sometimes it takes more than one fail to learn the lesson too, right? I think that's a good
Right.
lesson for all of us is that, okay, so this didn't turn out exactly like you had planned, or this is a mess even, but there are things to learn from that and to
Uh,
teach your children from that.
Yeah, I think that we are all problem solvers, that we can do that. And too often we want to solve things for our kids without giving them that critical thinking to work through something.
Yeah. 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 They have
So,
to make some mistakes, right?
right. And going back and asking those questions that help them look at it differently. Because sometimes when you're caught in that moment, when you are trying to justify your actions or whatever happened, you know what I mean, you are trying to make yourself feel better, and it's just and I think it distorts what's really going on, because we don't want to feel bad, right?
No, no. I mean, there's actually some research um, that supports the fact that when we do something that makes someone else feel bad, or we feel like someone else is feeling bad, that the places in our brain that light up when we have a physical um, injury, like you bump into a wall or something, that when you feel bad or you make someone feel bad or think you have it, those same places in your brain light up. So there's actually a little bit of pain in making someone feel.
Really,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Our brains
it
are,
is pretty amazing.
yeah.
And so, like, how do we equip parents to help them with the conversations that they need to have with their kids so their kids are speaking to themselves with love and also being truthful with themselves?
Yeah. I
And
think I
so,
hope that parents, first of all, can just give themselves a lot of grace uh, because parenting is the most important and the most difficult job we ever
isn't it? It's hard. I can look back now. My kids are grown. I still have those moments with them, even though they're grown adults. But I look back and go, oh boy, I didn't handle that right.
have. Yes,
Yeah.
and we all have busy, stressful days where you're not your best self, you know, and
And so
your kids still turn out okay.
that's right. And it's admitting that we're not our best selves. I think Dave gave an example of like someone coming home late. Wasn't it like a child or a teen was coming home late, and or the spouse? I'm trying to remember. But when they finally came home on time, to celebrate that win and say, I hope you had a great night, and just leave it at that. We say things like, oh, you barely made it. And you're
There
like,
are,
you know, And what comments like that, what does that do to the person that's receiving that comment? It could be that they're okay with it, or it could be that they're like, great, I can't do anything right. I got home on time and I still you barely made it. Like, you know what I mean? But yet they
Mhm.
did exactly what you asked them to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
It's probably
so,
not motivating for doing the thing that the parent has asked the next time. Right.
mhm. And then he talks about our allies that we surround ourselves with,
Mhm.
people who we're threatened by, um, and then the people who don't matter.
Mhm.
And I think that parents can maybe see that in the friendships their kids have.
And that's
And
a really, I mean, I think that all kids at some point have some challenges in that area, right? And
right,
it probably is good to help them frame it in a way that everybody isn't going to be your ally and everybody isn't going to be a threat, you know? Like, you're just not going to be best friends with everyone, probably.
we so want people to like us so much, and we so want that affirmed that we allow. And this is as adults too. It's not just kids, but this is something hopefully that we can help so kids can cope with a little bit better. That that we let it change us and how we do things. Like, it affects us so much because we want to be liked by everyone, and we want to have all the friends, and it does distort our reality and how we behave and what we do. And you can see that in how kids treat each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
think you can help them also kind of have some self agency in deciding what kind of qualities they want the people that they're friends with to have, you know?
isn't that a good question? Like, these are some conversations over meals or in the
Uh-huh.
car. We used to have the
Uh-huh.
best conversations in the car because kids couldn't go anywhere.
The car is great.
They're like,
Yeah.
oh no, we're gonna
Also, they don't have to look at you, right? So I think you can have some really good conversations because there's not the eye to eye, so they don't feel like, you know, threatened or like you have to be defensive. They can just look out the window, right, when they're talking to you or
right.
listening at least.
Well, and they're still being respectful, but
Hmm.
it's that thing about they have to think things through. And when you look at someone, you're like, is this going to be the right answer or the wrong answer? And when you're having conversations with their kids, it's not like there needs to be a right or wrong answer. You want to work through it with them together,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And help them also understand what they bring to friendships. You know, they're bringing
Yes.
something too. They're offering something to their friends as well.
And it's important to go over that with your kids. So what do you want in a friend?
Hmm.
And then we have had these discussions of, um, are your are they that way? This is
Hmm.
what you want in a friend. Are they being that friend for you?
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, and this is something that, especially in middle school, that was hard. It's like, some of your friends that you have now may not be your friends later, and that's okay. It'll happen naturally. Doesn't mean you don't like them anymore. It just, that happens, right?
Yeah.
And to prepare them for that a little bit, but also, just because someone's nice, it might not be a good fit
Hmm.
for you. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And helping your kids with discerning, like, and you don't want to, and this is where I struggle, the ally part.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Surrounding yourself with everybody that supports you. And I call them yes men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever you say, they all agree with. There's no one there um, to say, you might want to rethink that.
Yeah, I think you were talking earlier about critical thinking skills, which,
Yes.
everybody can use, and I'm not sure it's taught in school the same way that it used to. So I think at home we've really got to make sure that we're equipping them with some ways to think critically and having a friend who doesn't always agree with you. is one way to do that, you know?
Exactly. I knew this teacher who, when she would be on the playground, watching kids at recess or whatever, or kids in class, and the kids would come up and say something. She'd go, well, we're problem solvers. We're all problem solvers. So how do you think we're going to solve this?
Mhm.
And puts it back at them.
Mhm.
So you're putting it back in there to make them think about that and process everything. And then they've worked it out and they go back and do whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but they need that moment of, okay, I'm coming to, oh yeah. Okay, I've got this. I've got this. See ya. And then they go back and play or go back to whatever activity they were doing. But I
Mhm.
liked that.
With some built confidence, right? That they don't have to always get an idea from someone else, that they're able on their own to solve problems.
Right, exactly. And so I just was doing the children's moment, and I was trying to think of how to talk to kids about that, and parents, and I always refer to that Miss Frizzle, because she always says, make mistakes, get messy. And I'm like, yeah, make mistakes. That's how we learn. We learn what doesn't work, and we learn what works. Right.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so I want our kids to know that it's it's okay.
Yeah, I think we just have to provide safe spaces for them to make their mistakes and messes, and give them the
Right.
support they need to do it
Mhm.
again, the confidence they need to try it again, and have a different outcome.
Right. And as parents, we want to be in tune to why we're saying what we're saying when we're responding to our kids. Am I saying that out of frustration
Mhm,
and I need to just wait?
mhm.
I remember telling our kids that, we're going to talk about this later. I can't talk about it right now,
Yeah.
because I knew, like, I could have been upset myself or angry or whatever it was, and I needed to have a moment.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think it's important to name what is happening with you when you're I'm I'm really frustrated right now. It's not a good time for us to talk, but we are gonna talk about this a little bit later. And maybe even tell them when later it is, tomorrow, this evening, so they know they have some sort of frame in which, to know that it's gonna happen again. So they're not worried about that. The dread of mom's gonna talk to me.
And also because I've had to apologize to my kids before,
Mhm.
right? And come back and go, Mom was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I handled that horribly. And by the way, I've had to say that more than once,
We're all human,
right?
and I
And I think
yeah.
that's what they need to see.
Yes, exactly. Not this. I think that's a great gift to your children, because I think I grew up sort of thinking my parents never made any mistakes because they didn't do those kinds of things, right? Or they didn't say, "Hey, I was wrong about that," or I messed this up, or when I was your age, I messed this up, and that's why I'm telling you this now. That piece of the story never was part of it, so you're kind of like, but I think it's really important to tell your kids that you messed up.
Yeah. And sharing those stories with your kids, it lets them know you better.
Hmm.
Right. And there's something in shared stories. So if you're opening up,
Yeah.
well, at school today, right? This
Uh-huh.
happened.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's something about when you're sharing a story that makes your kids feel safe so they can share their story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
And
stories are
so,
so powerful. You know,
sorry.
stories are so powerful.
Yes,
We
exactly. They are.
remember,
And
we remember stories. We remember that stuff. Good
yeah,
stories.
we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, the things that we remember from when we were growing up, what stays with us, words stay with us, actions. Um, what was it? We were growing up. Do as I say, not as I do.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? You're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah. That's kind of, yeah. That I don't know that flies very well today.
It doesn't, but that was said a long time ago. You're like,
Good.
boy, were
And
we so, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We want to live by example, and living by example doesn't mean to be perfect. Living by example is being, when I make mistakes, how do I respond to that? How do I get back up and try again? And being truthful with how things are.
yeah.
So
I think you're saying, yeah, be authentic, right? Like, if we come to our children as our authentic selves, they will know that, just like they know when we're not quite being honest with them.
they know, don't they?
They do.
They know, and they're always watching. We said this earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kids are always watching. They're always listening.
Yep. They are. They are. Yes. So that's probably a great note to end on, is just to remember that your kids are always watching. And Tracy and I will be back at some point to talk with you about.
Yeah, talk about it a little bit more. We'd love to hear from you. What questions you may have, or what tools that we can help equip you with. And we'd love to hear from you, and we'll just keep this going if we can. I think it's really important that these conversations are happening to help parents. And if you have a situation and you want to share it, and we can feel free that we can talk about it. And this is a safe space. We don't have to mention names. We can just use it, and we can work through that and see what happens. Is that okay? Look at me. Like,
that's good. Yeah.
I loved this.
Thanks for inviting me to the conversation. And you're right. We're going to have more of them. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye.
Take care.